Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Well, I've had a couple of questions in regards to why would I dehydrate my herbs. So I thought I'd go ahead and approach that today. And part of this came from the video I did, which would have been about 6-7 weeks ago by the time you're seeing this, on the benefits of blackberry leaves. I was talking in the video about dehydrating the blackberry leaves, but didn't think to explain that yes, you can use them fresh. And so why would I dehydrate them? Well, the thing is during the season that any of these herbs are coming in fresh and I'm either cooking with them or making teas from them, yes, I use them fresh. As long as they're coming in, I'll use them fresh. They're going to have the most flavor, especially for your teas or your cold infusions. And why bother wasting the time and energy dehydrating them if you're just going to use them right away in making teas, cold infusions, and cooking with? So one of the main purposes of dehydrating is so that I have all these herbs to make teas and more with through the rest of the year when they're not coming in fresh. Sometimes people aren't thinking ahead. They're thinking, oh, I only use stuff fresh. It's like, well, what do you do for the rest of the year? If you want to make a cup of blackberry leaf tea or peppermint tea or whatever your favorite herb is to make teas out of. Peppermint is one of my favorites to use for teas, hot teas during the winter, all year long actually. So fresh during the summertime when it's growing and dried during the rest of the year. So when it comes to peppermint, I didn't bring any, I just grabbed a few random jars, by the way. I didn't bring in all of my dried herbs because it would take too long and I'd have the whole counter piled up with herbs. But yeah, I try to put up at least 2 to 3 quart jars of peppermint for tea to get us through the winter time. But that's not the only reason why I dehydrate herbs. It's not just the forward thinking of making sure I have plenty to get us through the year until the next crop comes in, but to be a little more forward thinking, I also try to put up extra just in case one of the herbs up and dies one year or just doesn't produce as much. I want to make sure I have enough for at least a couple of years. But aside from that, there's other uses for dried herbs than just using in teas and in cooking. And that is if you're using any of them like I would with the camellia flowers here, the dandelion flowers, the honeysuckle flowers, and many other herbs. These are things that I infuse in oil. Comfrey, plantain, calendula. And whenever you're infusing oils, it's very important that you only use dried goods. So if you're wanting to make, let's say you're making a cooking oil, garlic or pepper or both, infused cooking oil or oregano, you need to have those dried. This is really important because even though I'm not one to be afraid of botulism, that is one area that I am more particular about is using the dried goods whenever I'm infusing oil. On top of that, you can put a lot more into the oil because they're dried and you've pulled all the moisture out. But yeah, you want the moisture out before you start infusing. It's the moisture in the oil that's the issue. Oh, and lavender is another. And the reason it doesn't look totally purple is because I dehydrate up the flowers and the leaves and mix them all together because the leaves are going to be beneficial as well. And that is something else I also use in my oil infusion for my skin cream and salves for either just what I use on my face every day or even for helping with rashes or any other minor skin issues. And now another thing that I dehydrate up the herbs for because it's best this way is such as this lemon balm that I'm in the process of filling up this quart jar right now. Even though when it comes to making a tea or a cold infusion, I prefer to use fresh lemon balm in this case, I still like to put up a couple of quarts of dried lemon balm because this is something I add to the chickens' feed all through the year. So what I do right here, this is a blend, is I dehydrate up a bunch of my herbs like comfrey, nettle, lemon balm, chicory, and garlic greens, and several more. And I have a video just on this that I'll link to in the description box down below if you have chickens. And then I just add a little bit of this in with their feed. So they're getting the nutrients and also the natural antiviral and antibacterial properties. Calendula flowers would also be another great one to add, but I'm very stingy about my calendula flowers, so I don't feed those ones to my chickens. But I get tons of nettle and comfrey and chicory leaves and garlic greens, so those definitely get used in there, and lemon balm, of course. Dandelion greens is also a great one to add to their feed, and also to your pet's food. So you just want to make sure the different herbs, whatever it is you're going to use, are definitely healthy for your pets and safe. But this would be something, and I've done this before, where I sprinkled some dried herbs in with Cody's food, so that as he's eating the food, and I make sure it's nice and small. You could also powder it up and sprinkle it on there. Otherwise, they might not eat it if you just throw big chunks in there. But that way, he's getting the benefits of that as well. So very, very healthy. And then the other thing would be for making extracts. So if I'm making medicinal extracts, now let's say I have a headache or some kind of pain, and it's the time of the year that my feverfew and the valerian and the catmint are all growing, I'll just go out there and eat them fresh, right off the plant. It's not always enjoyable, but it really works well for curing pain. But I still like to have a lot of that dried up for making extracts through the year. And I prefer to make my extracts, since I'm not using vodka anymore. In most of my extracts, I don't use vodka or any other kind of higher proof alcohol. My favorite solvent is homemade wine and honey when I'm making my extracts. And so because of that, I prefer to use dried herbs rather than fresh. So the extracts, I can make them any time of the year, but I still use dried herbs. And then those are what I take during the time of the year. Those things aren't growing fresh when I need them. But as long as they're fresh, like yesterday I was working in the garden and I did something. You can actually see, I don't know what I did to my hand. I don't know if it was I poked myself on something or if a spider bit me or whatever it was, but boy, it was aching. And so I went out and I took a leaf of plantain and a leaf of lamb's ear, a small leaf, and then chewed those up and then put them right and made sure I got a lot of the juices coming out and put that right on that sore, and then took an old sock where I cut the ankle part off, cut a hole for my thumb, and then just pulled that over there to hold it in place, and it worked great. Within like 30 seconds, the pain was already gone, and I couldn't believe it. I'm surprised there's actually even still a mark there, but it actually looks like I bruised the palm of my hand. So I don't even know what I did, but it was swollen and it was sore until I put that on there. So when it comes to those kind of things, I do prefer using it fresh, but unfortunately, we don't always have those things fresh. But usually if I'm going to do something like that, like get stung by a bee or get bit by a spider, it's usually happening when I'm doing my gardening, so the stuff is fresh anyway. So let's talk a little bit, since I'm talking about this, I did recently have a video come out about dehydrating herbs. And whenever I'm dehydrating herbs, I always dehydrate on a lower setting, like 110, 115. Some flowers I tend to, like if they're thicker, like calendula and dandelion, I might go up to 115. And then more delicate herbs, 110. And some maybe even lower, like golden oregano is pretty delicate, and so I try to be very careful with that, and violets and pansies. So those I tend to go with the lower heat setting. And this way you're going to preserve a lot more of the benefits of these things. You're not burning them off. These are a nice low heat. And then obviously there's the air drying. So if you live in a dry enough climate that you can do it the good old-fashioned way, just even putting it in paper bags. A lot of people do that because the paper is going to allow airflow, but also prevent dust and light from getting in there and damaging the nutrients. That's actually going to be the very best way if you have the space and you don't have high humidity. Here, we do rely on electric dehydrators during that time of the year that I'm putting all this stuff up, because we live in rain country. We're right next to a rainforest. And so on hot days when we're getting plenty of sun, which is when I really like to dehydrate because I can use the solar power to run my electric dehydrator, well, we're also getting a lot more humidity. And so things just don't dry when you do that. Now in the wintertime, I can dry things next to my wood stove because it's a dry heat, and that works really good. But obviously during the summertime, we're not building fires to heat the house. So it's all going to depend on your climate and what kind of space you have. Because here's the other thing for me, I am always dehydrating so many herbs. I would have little paper bags hung all over my house, and that would actually just kind of drive me crazy. And I would prefer having them in paper bags to keep dust, lint, and whatever else off of them, and the light exposure. And I would just really hate that personally. And then just the space to do all of that, and having a good place to put it where, you know, it's kind of out of the way and all that. So it's all going to be dependent on you. There's not one right way to do things. Just remember, people have been dehydrating. It's one of the very oldest methods of preserving foods. And yes, you can choose to freeze dry if you already have a freeze dryer. But if you don't have a freeze dryer, there's no sense in spending that kind of money when dehydrating, as long as you're going with a lower temperature, is an excellent way to preserve your herbs and your foods. In fact, I brought in a couple of other things that aren't herbs, such as zucchini is one of the things I dehydrate up. And why would I dehydrate up zucchini and rhubarb and even snow peas and certain other vegetables from my garden? Pumpkin, tomatoes. There's a lot of things that I dehydrate from the garden. Well, not only because it's ease of use, and it is easy, and I have videos, I'll link to a video down below on how to use dehydrated foods, and they are easy. I can throw a soup together in no time and then just let it cook, and the stuff rehydrates while it's cooking. So really easy for soups. And even rhubarb, no, I don't blanch. And you can just cook this up in water, or whatever it is you're going to make jam out of it, whatever you want to do. Well, one of the reasons I do that is because it saves a ton of space. So one example I've given is this jar. I'm still in the process of filling it. Has about at least 9 or 10 stalks of rhubarb, average size stalks of rhubarb in here. Now, if that was fresh rhubarb in this pint jar, I could only fit 2. And I know because I used to freeze a lot of my rhubarb in jars like this for adding to whatever kind of pies or crisp I want to make. And while I will still freeze some, those are mostly for pressing the juice out of, for making rhubarb wine out of. But for this, you know, because this works just as well for anything else, this takes up, as you can see, it takes up a lot less space. So same thing with the zucchini, and I always forget, I know I talk about it in the zucchini, one of my dehydrating zucchini videos, but how many full-size zucchinis I can fit in one jar like this is pretty amazing. So because the zucchini dehydrates up so small and takes up so little room in storage, and I use a lot of this through the year. Because not only do I add it to soups, I also add it to sauces like my Italian sauce, and to a lot of my different white sauces, such even a fettuccine type sauce. I'll put that in there and just let it cook in the sauce, so we're getting a vegetable right in there too. And anyway, so those are the main reasons why I dehydrate. But yes, while your herbs are coming in fresh, use them fresh as long as you're able, but make sure you're putting some up too for the rest of the year. So any thoughts or ideas you'd like to share, please put those in comments down below, and don't forget to open up the description box by clicking somewhere down here below the screen. You'll see either the word more, that's if you're on a smart device, or on a computer or PC, you'll see show more. You click on that, it'll open up the description box, and you can find the links and other information I'll be putting in there. And thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.